Folks, I am super excited about the guest I have and the unique show I have on tap for you guys today, as we are going to be joined by a man who's going to help us take a peek inside the fractured, malfunctioning, demented mind of delusional Donald Trump. Because sometimes these days, life seems like it's spiraling out of control. Sometimes you feel like you're taking crazy pills, don't you? I see crazy people. You see, we're living in a world, we're living in a country, we're living in a country where the so-called president of the United States has a demented, distorted view of himself, and the rest of the world is suffering as a result. He sees himself as a Superman, a strong Superman, but the reality is that he's a droopy, sleepy, and weak. He is so consumed with envy of his predecessor, President Obama, that he posted a tweet accusing him of starting a war with Iran just because of his ratings, and then he turned around and actually did what he accused President Obama of doing. He was obsessed with the fact that President Obama was given a Nobel Peace Prize to the point where he actively solicited people to give him an award. And then he went and accepted an award, a Nobel Peace Prize from the actual Nobel Peace Prize winner, which is kind of cringe, wouldn't you say? Isn't that like a participation trophy? And then he went and started 2 wars. So in times like this, we need our sanity. So if you're seeing a therapist or a shrink, good for you. I highly advise that. But today, my guest is someone who has spent many, many hours, days, weeks, months, and even years observing and analyzing the behavior of Donald Trump. He actually had a YouTube show called Shrinking Trump, which had millions of views. Dr. John Gartner has spent nearly 3 decades teaching at Johns Hopkins University Medical School, and we are super lucky to have him here with us today. So, what? Oh my goodness. An error has occurred. Wait, can you guys hear me? Because I'm getting a weird message on my screen here. I hope I don't have to do that intro all over again, because that was fire. But I hope you're ready to get into it, because I am. Let's go. Incredible person, incredible human being. Yes, we're famous. Yes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of. Oh, hang on. To another episode of the Defiant Weekly. I'm your host, Majid Padelin, aka BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad Defiant, and with us, as promised, is none other than Dr. John Gartner of Shrinking Trump. Doc, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's good to be seen, and I'm glad you had a chance to walk your pups. Which, by the way, I'm sure you would agree, pets, animals, dogs, cats, etc. Are they not very therapeutic for dealing with stress?
You know, I say every dog is a therapy dog.
Well said. Well said. So I have a bunch of things that I wanted to get to with you today. I know you had some things as well. Mm-hmm. Our topic for the show is he snapped. So what do I mean? I mean, this is a guy who doesn't know whether he's coming or going. To an objective observer, he is today. Just earlier today, he's like, he was asked, "Is this a war or is it an excursion?" And he said, It's both. It can't be both. It's one or the other.
Well, actually, what he said, following up on that, is it's a war for them and an excursion for us. Now, this is the malignant narcissist coming out again, right? In other words, we're beating the shit out of them, we're dominating them, and but it's barely touching us. None of this solemn commander in chief, concerned about the lives of the people he's putting at risk. He doesn't care about any of that. What he cares about is demonstrating his power.
Mm.
And the more destructive and frightening it is, like a mob boss, right, the more gratifying it is for him. The thing that I want to point out, and I think from a psychological point of view, this is really important that people understand this. He's getting off on this.
Mm.
He's enjoying this. This is like Call of Duty, but in real life, and he's having fun. So not only is he distracting from the Epstein files in a political way, but in a psychological way, right? So he's not feeling hunted or prosecuted, or his poll numbers are low. No, he's not focusing on those things. What he's doing is going to what makes him feel good, his happy place, which is to be powerful and destructive. Okay. And so he loves blowing up these buildings. It's fun for him. And this is what I'm really worried about. I think he's becoming addicted to it. We're talking about Cuba's next, and we're also in Ecuador. And, he actually, this is a way he has of like self-medicating, making himself feel better, is going to war. And I just want to read you one thing to support my point. Okay. Jonathan Karl, this is pulled off of his social media, his X account. He said, I just, talked to the president, and he kind of tried to summarize the conversation, but then he got this weird face. And
Jonathan Karl, the journalist.
Yeah. So he talked, and he said, so then the president said to me about Iran, I hope you're impressed. How do you like the performance? Venezuela was obvious, but this might be better. How do you like the performance?
That's sick.
It's sick.
It's absolutely sick.
Absolutely sick. Well, we've elected the sickest human being possible to this office. A malignant narcissist, for those of you who don't know, is a personality disorder that was introduced by Erich Fromm, who escaped Hitler to explain Hitler and other leaders like him. And it has, in addition to narcissism, there's sadism and psychopathy and paranoia. Okay. And so they revel in feeling powerful through harming and destroying things, right? It's a feeling of omnipotent destructiveness, right? It puffs them up to, push you down. Okay. So and that's actually part of what is the bond between him and his followers. This is, they wrote about this after World War II, about the authoritarian personality. Mm-hmm. The authoritarian doesn't love you. He hates the people you hate. You know what I mean? And he's going to take revenge on them and take power over them. And if he has to do that violently, so be it. And we will celebrate that. And so that's what he's acting out with all of these war games.
Is his puffing himself up like reflective of how he feels about himself? Like, is it like the more he tries to push people down, is that a sign that he really feels shitty about himself? Is that equated?
Well, I think his father, I'm trying to remember how he said it now, you're either the predator or the prey, and so you're right. These narcissists are always feeling a sense of emptiness, right? That they have to compensate for with some kind of grandiosity. But also, he believes that's his true self. That's who he's entitled to be. And so everything that pushes against that, he has to assert it even more violently. And you see, this is the one area where he has a free hand. Right? He can declare, he can strike anyone with missiles. I used to say to Joanna Coles, when I'm on her show on the Daily Beast, and, the Daily Beast reaches out to the White House for comments, so we know they're aware of the show. And, we're talking about his dementia. And I said to Joanna Coles, there may be some dead Venezuelan fishermen because of us, because, he gets irritated at some interview in the Daily Beast, and, he needs to feel powerful again. So he has to blow some shit up and blow some people up. And the other thing that supports my thesis about this is he posted and then finally took down on social media, something where he spliced. I think I sent you a copy of this, where he
You
spliced.
did.
He spliced.
You sent me this thing from Richard Engel where it was he was commenting on that disgusting video where he spliced in pictures of like video games and movies, and they're trying to make this make the war look fantastical and bombastic and all that. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
I'm gonna play a snippet of. I'm gonna play a snippet of that now. I just don't want to. I don't want my what do you call my page to get hit for for the copyright thing.
Well, this is NBC News. They don't have a copyright on news.
We'll see.
We'll
see. You
can't show Saturday Night Live. Bogey, you want to do that at the end?
They are outraged. It's an understatement. They are furious. The House has been putting out these videos, splicing together real combat footage in which people are dying, where Iranian military targets, ships, bases are blowing up, and intercutting them with movie clips, sports clips, video games. And I've been speaking to many senior former U.S. military commanders, people who had top-level positions. And to say that they are outraged is an understatement. They are furious. I had conversations that were peppered with four-letter words. What are these people doing? What are they thinking? Only someone who has never really seen combat could think that it is a joke.
But you see, this is the level that we're dealing with. And then when you factor in his dementia, okay, not only is it his dementia, but people need to understand the type of dementia that most experts thinks he has is something called frontotemporal dementia, not Alzheimer's, which his father had actually.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference is how the brain deteriorates and what the symptoms are. So with Alzheimer's, it's more of a diffuse deterioration and you lose memory. That's the thing you most notice. Unfortunately, with frontotemporal dementia, it's the frontal lobes that are decaying. And so what you lose is judgment and impulse control. Okay. And so the most striking symptom is that they act out. These are the ones in the nursing home who get aggressive, who they have to sedate, right? Because they're really grabbing the nurses or punching people or running away or, so the thing is that what we have is someone who is, number one, evil. Number two, a cornered kind of animal, and has this weapon available to him, the U.S. military, and then you have someone who's literally, their frontal lobes are shrinking, so he really has no kind of judgment. He just has this id, right, that just wants to act out, and there's no one around him, to contain that. So
I'm so glad I'm so glad you brought that up, because this term really has been bizarre. Like, I know, you and I both watched him during his first term. We're like, oh, he's crazy, when he was sending out those loopy tweets and wondering should he nuke a hurricane. But this term seems even more unhinged. And when you say he has a lack of judgment, so the other day he was at the dignified transfer of remains of the U.S. service people who were killed in combat, and he wore a baseball cap, right? And some people on Fox were trying to make like it wasn't a big deal. So you know how you could tell that they really did know it was a big deal? They showed a previous transfer with him not wearing the baseball cap, and the next day there he is in his golf cart. He's golfing. You know who specifically said he didn't want to play golf while people were at war? George W. Bush. So he has officially made himself more ridiculous and showing less restraints than George W. Bush.
Well, first of all, I mean, at some level, right, the golf cart thing, he just doesn't care about anyone else. So it really isn't troubling his mind, but it's bad optics. And the thing with the baseball cap is he didn't have to wear it. It didn't gain anything by wearing it. So I think you're right. It's a faux pas, right, of social judgment. But in other words, that part of his brain is deteriorating. He doesn't know anymore even what's appropriate. And so, you're right. Before he would say crazy stuff, but he wasn't doing as much crazy stuff. Okay.
Right.
Now he's doing crazy stuff. Now, some of it is the fascism takeover, right? He always wanted to have a secret police and, seize control of the voting machines. I mean, he telegraphed those, plays, like 5 years ago in advance. So we should have seen that coming, right? But there's another way in which it's just kind of mysterious. It really is like he's just deteriorating in his capacity to function socially. When he said to that reporter, shut up, piggy, it was just but the things like that was crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, we're used to him giving them nicknames and abusing them and saying they're fake news, but that was like a level of grossness and kind of obscenity that just revealed that he's losing it. You know what I mean? And so he's losing. The thing is, the guy never had many guardrails to begin with, right?
Yeah.
But he's losing the ones he already had. In every respect, right? So it comes out in these sort of bizarre areas.
He's also removed, as I think you mentioned earlier, he's also removed a ton of guardrails. He doesn't have the people who are around him are so sycophantic.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen this. You may have already seen this, but he gave the members of his cabinet like Florsheim shoes, which I didn't even know Florsheim was still open. I didn't realize that.
I have a pair.
Yeah, but so he gave these shoes out, and Marco Rubio, the pair that he got to Marco Rubio, he didn't bother to even ask anybody, what size do you wear? It's just like, here, take these. So Marco's shoes are way too big for his feet, but rather than return them or exchange them for the right size, he's wearing them.
Right.
He's so afraid. It's so bizarre. Can you explain to me why the people around him are so afraid to even give him the most mild amount of criticism or correction?
Well, because then, he'll shoot them. He'll kill them. I mean, think of a mob boss. Okay. You look at the history of the mafia. There's some mob bosses who are like, more enlightened dictators. Some of them like just would kill you for looking at them crosswise. You know what I mean? And so the thing is, he doesn't mind sentencing anyone to political death, right? If they irritate him or disagree with him, he likes it. He likes to hurt people and enforce people. But the funny thing is, he also likes to humiliate them, right? So he likes to basically pick people. And this is the thing. In his first administration, he was frustrated because he picked people who actually had some expertise, some conscience, some integrity. So there was a point beyond which they wouldn't go. So here he learned from that experience. Everyone in his cabinet was chosen for being a purely psychopathic person who will do anything. Right. So that's got to be that's number one priority. If I tell you to kill your grandmother, you're going to kill your grandmother. OK. And then you're going to say your grandmother committed suicide. I mean, so first they have to be willing to be, made men in the gang. Yeah. Then they have to be bad at their jobs. Okay. They have to know nothing about the institution that they're leading. And so in that way, there won't be any like institutional memory, or like, no, I'm sorry, sir, but we just don't do it that way here, because they don't know how it's done and they don't even care anyway. So people who are completely both ignorant and pliable. Okay. And he's populated his entire world with those people now.
Yeah.
And stunning. So it is stunning. And so we really are in a whole heap of trouble because there's no guardrails. It's more like, you're right. It's more like lube than guardrails, right? I mean, they're just bending over. So this joke writes itself, but I mean, they're just like bending over, falling over themselves right? To see who can submit to him more.
It actually makes me wonder if he specifically chose these buffoons, these clowns, as like a built-in insulation from the 25th Amendment, because this is what I wanted to ask you. Like, what is the point of having a 25th Amendment if we can't use it on objectively the most insane, unfit president in the history of America, with failing physical and mental health, rambling about drapes while American soldiers are dying unfit. And this was a tweet that I posted with the video clip. You may have seen this, where he broke off from a meeting where he was talking about something else, and he just spent the next 5 minutes rambling on about the drapes.
Yep.
Did you see that?
I did. And this is not the first time he's done stuff like that. Again, if you've ever had a relative who had dementia, right, their attention is very easily derailed, right, onto some detail that's of interest to them, so yeah, they're having some high level meeting. It's like, but look at these drapes, and they're, these men are dying. But look at these drapes, this is great gold. I know drapes, and I used to be a builder, I did a lot of drapes, and so that he's just going down another, rabbit hole, right? Because his associations just kicked in something about the drapes, and now he's just wandering. This is the kind of mentation. That's the other thing. You can see how loose, right, his associations are. It's not even just that he's insensitive to, the fact that they're talking about the war around people dying. He really just is derailing cognitively. He's off that topic now. Now, maybe it's more pleasant for him to talk about the drapes. That's the other thing. He wants to talk about something where he feels good, something in his comfort, but he'll just do that. He'll just go, look at these cool drapes. And it's just like, now all he's thinking about are the drapes.
Let me back up for a minute just to make sure. I want to make sure. I'm pretty sure most of our audience is already familiar with you and are already huge fans, but I just want to make sure they understand that when you first hit the scene, right, you were on the Duty to Warn Twitter page, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And your concern was that people were not paying attention to this man's obvious dementia, and there's an issue, right? There is a problem with diagnosing someone from afar. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, one thing I always like to point out is actually the ethical prohibition is not against diagnosing from afar. It's diagnosing a public figure from afar, like the opposite of the libel laws. Okay. Here we're giving special protection to public figures. Why? Because when Barry Goldwater, when they wrote a scurrilous article about him in this defunct magazine, Fact Magazine, about Goldwater being psychiatrically unstable, he sued them and he won. And the American Psychiatric Association was embarrassed. And also, we don't want to be making enemies of people in high places. Right. So what they didn't say you can't diagnose someone, a patient you have met. They just say you can't diagnose a public figure because that could threaten the guild of psychiatry. So it's very important that people think about that.
So it was just self-serving.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's a cover your ass, because the American Psychiatric Association, above all else, is a guild organization, right? Their job is to protect the profession of psychiatry. And so that ethical principle is don't get us in trouble with powerful people.
so you haven't caught any flack from these guys. They haven't called you up and say, "Hey, what are you doing? What is this shrinking Trump stuff?"
Well, the reason Harry stopped the show is that we were expecting to be sued any minute, and still are. Yeah, he was his girlfriend got him scared, and he just decided it wasn't worth it. I
missed that show, by the way. You guys were
great.
Me
too.
One of the things that I loved about the show is that, most people, when they talk about or think about psychiatry or psychology, aside from the show Shrinking, have you seen that?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good show. But aside from that, most people think it's stodgy and it's boring. But you always every show was entertaining and it was accessible. That was the thing. It was accessible. You used language, you didn't like dumb it down for us, but you made it so that everybody was able to understand what the hell you were saying. And I appreciated that tremendously. So I really do hope you guys bring it back at some point.
Yeah, maybe we'll do like a Sunshine Boys kind of, do Shrinking Trump Redux or something.
I wanted to ask,
but in terms of the suit, I will say this: the White House has commented on me personally now.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they say?
They've described me as a disgraced doctor. I know, it is actually funny.
That's great. That's a feather in your cap, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Congratulations. Um,
Yeah,
are
sort of
there
like a
any?
red badge of courage, in the Civil War. On one hand, you're proud of it, but on the other hand, it means you have to like get your arm shot, So,
Yeah, yeah.
because it means I'm in their gun sights.
What other figures in history that you've either studied or read about can you think of who closely resemble Trump's own unique mix of narcissism, corruption, and megalomania?
Well, Hitler. I mean, that he's the archetype of malignant narcissism. But there's other leaders like Stalin or Saddam Hussein. I mean, really these megalomaniacal strongmen. Are really all cut from this same malignant narcissism cloth. That's why the playbook, the authoritarian playbook, is so so reified now. It's these type of people exist in our world, right?
Yeah,
and they're very good at grabbing power. This is this is the John Gotti's of politics. You know what I mean? They really are. And we try to have institutions to weed these people out, but they're very good at grabbing power and dominating and controlling. If you think of Trump as a mob boss, it really does help you kind of a cross between John Gotti and Hitler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of get the basic idea of what we're talking about.
That's such an excellent point because just I think it was Sunday, I caught this show on Netflix called Nuremberg.
I haven't seen
probably
that
heard of it. Oh,
Yeah,
you are going to enjoy it. I think. I think you will. Russell Crowe. I think he put on like 70 pounds for this, and he was playing. He is huge, but it was such an amazing performance. He played that guy Hermann Goring, and that was Hitler's number 2 guy. And Rami Malek, who's also an excellent actor, he plays a psychiatrist. He's an army psychologist, right? Who goes in, and his job was to interview Goring, because Goring and 21 or 22 other top Hitler officials were being tried. And this was such a high-profile case. It was so important because if it failed, they would never do another trial again. But if it succeeded, they were going to be able to hold all those high-ranking Nazis, mid-level Nazis. They were going to be able to hold them accountable for their war crimes. So Rami Malek was supposed to get inside Goring's mind and see if he's fit to stand trial, but also Uncle Sam wanted to make sure he could give them some other information about him. But there is that thing. There's that patient, doctor-patient confidentiality thing that he was concerned about. He was concerned about violating it. But then he saw that video, the film of them going through the concentration camps. And I swear to God, I've seen these videos like 3 or 4 times. And when I saw it the other night, it was like seeing it for the first time. It was so horrifying. And so he was so horrified, he decided to go against his ethics, his code of ethics, and he gave them the entire book. He was going to write a book about it, and he's like, screw this, hit him with the book. So my question out of all that to you is,
well, you could say something dramatic here too, because we decided that this Goldwater rule was really not the major thing, right? The major thing was to warn the population. Right. That's where the name of our organization, Duty to Warn, came from, because we also have an ethical duty to warn. If one of my patients, if I suspect they might hurt somebody, I have a duty to warn the potential victim. That's actually the law now in all 50 states. Well, what about if there's 300 million potential victims? Right. And as a psychologist who's observing a mentally ill person in a threatening posture, isn't it my job to warn people what I'm aware of, that I'm aware of a threat that they're not aware of because of my observations, professional expertise. So, I say, no one ever said about, when Hitler was rising, that someone was more ethical for being silent. And yet that's what they're asking us to do.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Um, let me switch to you about the Iran war.
Yeah.
Um, why? Why are we at war right now? And I'm asking you this because he campaigned, he made such a big deal out of not of
Yeah.
being the no
Sure.
war president,
Right.
no new wars. Like that was one of the main reasons a lot of people voted for him, was that they were like, yeah, finally, no new wars, great. And now we have not one and in Venezuela, but two in Iran. And if Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio have their way, Cuba will be number 3.
He's going to attack Cuba. He's going to attack Cuba. I'm saying he's on a crime spree, and it's orgiastic for him.
What is behind his war orgasms?
Okay, well, like for example, people have pointed out, and this is also his cognitive disability, but he doesn't seem to have a coherent set of reasons why we went in. He doesn't seem to have a coherent set of goals as to what we're trying to accomplish and when or why we would leave. Right? It's all, it doesn't. The timeline goes back and forth. Okay, so everything's fluid. But then Jonathan Karl said, "So how will we know when it's time to be over?" He goes, "It'll be over when I want it to be over."
Yeah.
Think about that statement. Think about it, because there's a lot in there. It'll be
Yeah.
over when he feels like it, when he wants it to be over, when in his inner emotions, it being over will make him feel good. It's all about him.
Yeah.
It's that solipsistic. You know what I mean? This war really doesn't matter how it affects billions of people, right? It's over when he wants it to be over. Remember when somebody asked him about Iceland? They're saying, well, we already have bases in Iceland and they've given you permission to, ramp them up as much as you want. Why would it be important for us to own Iceland? Since they're not stopping us from doing anything that we want. So what
Right.
would you get? And he said, well, it's psychologically important.
What?
That's what he said.
I missed that one. Oh my God. That's crazy.
So in other words, we're gonna, start a war with NATO to take Greenland because it's psychologically important to him, to how he feels about himself at a particular moment in time. So I think he's gonna keep getting pressure domestically, right? With Epstein, with low polls, with high gas prices, with bad economies, with so this blue wave is coming. So I know he's going to do something militant to take control of the elections or to invalidate the elections or not seat people. But the thing is that it's not just a trick to distract people. It's a psychological need and drive, right? With no, again, inhibitors, right? No judgment. He'll attack when he feels like attacking, and look, I mean, in all fairness, come on, you and I have been there, right? Sometimes you just have a bad day and you just feel like you need to bomb another country.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, but that is him in a nutshell. How much danger are we in?
I think we're potentially careening
On
towards
a scale
World
of
War III.
scale of 1 to 10.
I think it's a 9. I think the doomsday clock could actually be chiming 11 right now.
Wow. What, in your opinion, short of impeachment, can anybody do?
Well, I'm going to quote Rachel Maddow. We have to hope that the cheeseburgers win.
Cheeseburgers, yes. Cheeseburgers in the KFC. You mentioned a minute or so ago, you were running through the list of domestic issues that Trump has, and that includes the Epstein files. You may recall that just before he launched this war, there was another tranche of Epstein documents. This one was very they're all serious, right? But this one included some serious allegations from a woman who was 15 at the time, and I believe she was interviewed multiple times by the FBI. And all of a sudden, after these files were released, boom, we have war. You don't see that. You don't think that. Do you think that
They're
he
totally
would have
connected.
launched this to distract from the Epstein files?
I'm saying he would do it to distract from indigestion. I mean, I think that we're not really understanding the casualness. You know what I mean? How easy this is for him, right? He doesn't have the kind of, it's such a solemn thing, the most solemn thing that, a president does, bring his country war. He's not losing a night's sleep over it. He doesn't care. It's only about how it makes him feel in the moment. That's always how he's operated, and it's hard for us to really imagine someone whose psychology is like that. So that's why we keep going. But wait a minute. But wait a minute. We keep doing like a double and a triple take because it just doesn't seem to make sense. We can't get our brains around how like a Velociraptor human thinks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the book is out on Trump right now. Everybody, when I say that, I mean like everybody kind of knows it's like the worst kept secret. If you're going to see Trump, if you're having a meeting with him and you want to get something out of him, what do you do? What do you do? You go in, you fluff him up with flattery, you praise him, you say what a great president he is. You don't go empty-handed.
Right.
You go with some kind of gift, and usually it's gold because he loves. What is his obsession? Just off the offhand there, what is his obsession with gold? And number two,
it's like King Midas. You have to give him his weight in gold. Remember that? King Midas.
Yeah.
You have to give him his weight in gold.
But it's very specific to him. Like if you even go back to before his
royalty,
before his political days. Remember his Trump Tower pictures with Melania and young Barron. Gold, the gold toilet, for crying out loud. What does it mean? What in his brain?
Well, but gold has always been associated with royalty. And I think it's his way of claiming, his royal nature.
Yeah.
King Donald, he's posted pictures of himself as a king.
Now, Trump, what I was angling towards before was Trump sees himself as a strong man, or what the dude bros call an alpha male. But with him accepting that Nobel Peace Prize from I think her name is Machado, right? Like doesn't that reek of weakness? Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, to me, it doesn't exude I'm this strong guy. It means it's a participation trophy that I took from someone because I needed that to feel better about myself.
But you see, in his grandiose mind, he's entitled to it all. You see what I mean? It should be the Trump Center, not the Kennedy Center. And somebody said, well, does that really seem right? He said, well, I survived an assassination attempt. He held up money to the New York and New Jersey tunnel unless they renamed Penn Station after him. I mean, he's like, he's that. He's a megalomaniac. He thinks, remember when they elected the Pope, he actually tweeted out pictures of himself as a Pope.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? But you mentioned our show. We would always do something goofy and funny at the end. I actually, I used to spend all this money on Amazon on costumes that I would wear. Like
same dude.
I got a Pope hat, and then the joke was like, I pretended to be Trump, right? And but I was Pope, and I was like making all these like crazy, Trumpian statements.
Oh, you're funny.
The church.
We should have done a show. You and I should have done, because I have wigs here. I have a king outfit. King for No Kings Day. I bought a king outfit for when he first started attacking those boats in the middle of the ocean. I bought a pirate outfit with an eye patch. Had the frilly shirt, puffy shirt, and everything. It's hilarious. Yeah. What's the deal with his physical, like, first of all, there was that day that he had the droopy. Did you see his droopy mouth thing?
Yeah,
Let me put it up
he's
here.
had some kind of a stroke. I mean, look, and keep that picture on the screen for a minute.
Yeah.
That could be in a textbook. Do you know what I mean? Because only one side of his face is drooping. You can't even fake that. You know what I mean? And you can't fake it. You can't control it all. I think he has been trying to make more of an effort to compensate for it. But the thing is that he's also having weakness in his right arm, and in his right leg. So there's definitely something that happened on the left side of his brain, some kind of transient schematic event or a full stroke, but some kind of stroke-like process, and that's probably why he's taking blood thinners. But the thing is that the only two things that can produce that are a stroke and Bell's palsy. And Bell's palsy is permanent. It's not temporary, and he's begun to recover a little bit. I don't think he has Bell's palsy. So, and there's actually a lot of medical doctors now, not a lot, but a couple who've been coming out and arguing that he had a stroke. I could find the name of one of the doctors that was online outlining why he thought that it was a stroke. So here's where the cheeseburgers come in. He clearly has some serious vascular problems. With it's venous insufficiency. A lot of people think he has congestive heart failure, which can be a chronic condition. There's just like fluid in your lungs and your heart. It's just not pumping. That's why you've got the fluid buildup in the ankles, right? You're just not circulating. The body can't circulate the fluid well enough, and it sort of builds up in places. So he seems to have some kind of circulatory problem that's affecting his heart, his brain. So that's on top of everything else. And actually, people with dementia, often it is a stroke that is the final coup de grace.
Wow.
And so they may be related in some ways as the arteries are deteriorating, or but yeah. So he's a very sick man.
Is there any correlation between his moods, his crazy mood swings, and these physical glitches that he's experiencing, including like the naps and the and the outbursts, calling somebody piggy, and
Right. I mean, this is like a typical dementia patient, right? He's falling asleep in the middle of the day randomly, despite the circumstances, right? And then having outbursts when he's awake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is this is what's so crazy, as you said, about this cabinet, right? That this is like the emperor's new clothes, right? It's so out in the open, and yet because they're so sycophantic, you said this is how could this is like the worst president in history. Well, this is the worst cabinet in history. He's intentionally picked the worst cabinet in history. He's done the opposite of what every other president has done. It's like, even sometimes put politics aside to pick the best, people for the job, but no, he's actually picked the worst people for the job on purpose.
How far do you think he would be willing to go to ensure that that he stays in office?
See, I think here's the problem. I don't think he has any limits. I don't think he has any limits. I mean, I don't think there's anything he wouldn't do. That would be that's an easier conversation. It's like, well, what would he do? It's like, well, he may come up with a scheme I never even thought of. But,
right.
I can't tell you what he will do, but I can tell you there's nothing he won't do.
That's frightening. I want to briefly take a pause to say thank you to Trey Ann for the kind, generous donation. Thank you for that. Have you been busier in the past year with patients who are concerned about world affairs, concerned about politics? What are people telling you? What are their biggest fears?
Well, I think it's interesting when you have a macro event like this, right, that affects everybody. Which is, in some ways, I really don't feel like I'm having that different a conversation with my patients as I am having with my relatives or with my friends or my colleagues. Like, we're all having to just acknowledge this is happening. This is not a figment of our imagination. This is a nightmare come to life. but unfortunately, we're not dreaming. I mean, you have to acknowledge the reality of what's happening. I think that's the big takeaway. And yes, how do we cope with it? And basically try to live our lives right as best we can, and express the little bit of spirit that God gave us. They can't take that away from us. I think that's the basic technique. However, that works for you. But we're living through, I sometimes wonder what it would be like. We've been so pampered. We've been such pampered babies. Our generation is the most pampered group of babies in the history of human beings, in the history of living creatures, actually.
Wait, pampered?
Go back 100 million years, because we've had peace and prosperity since World War II, right? You didn't get drafted. No one shot at you. You didn't starve. You're not cold. You're not hungry, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, just that you can take a shower puts you, 20,000 years ahead of most of humanity. I mean, so
that's funny. True. Yeah.
So, we have had these cushy existences. I think we have no idea that we cannot actually get our heads around how much danger we're in and how bad it can get. I think I would refer people to like the history of dystopian science fiction. I think we're heading very potentially towards a real dystopia. Look, if there's no adults in the room, right? The default option for humanity, going back hundreds of thousands of years, is constant war. Right? That's the default option. Constant war everywhere, and we grew up after what was considered the worst of wars, World War II, and America led with the other democracies, put together NATO, created this military behemoth, and said, we're going to keep the peace. We're going to enforce certain international rules, right? You can't just invade anybody, okay, just to take land, which is what Putin's done. But, we're trying to stand, if Trump wasn't a traitor, NATO would be standing, against that aggression. That's what they were created for. The worst thing he's done is he's taken that architecture apart. Now there is no policeman. America can't be a world of policemen. Well, actually, the world was a better place when America was a world policeman. Try a world without a policeman, because that's what we have now. Europe isn't strong enough to, enforce its will on the world. And so now we have regressed back to the state of nature where each, group is led by a leader who just wants to aggrandize their power and their wealth, right? And is willing to fight for it. That's how humanity has lived up until now, except for the last 80 years. And now they have nuclear weapons.
When I look at the dynamic, the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, it kind of reminds me of like the scenario where you've got like the big schoolyard bully, right? And that big schoolyard bully always has like a little shrimp. Who's his hype man, yeah. He's the little shrimp, yeah, that's it. And Trump is Putin's hype man in this. He won't say a coarse word against him. We learned the other day that Iran was getting help from Iran was getting help from Russia, targeting U.S. citizens. And this motherfucker has not had one coarse word to say against Vladimir Putin. His answer is, well, it couldn't be anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. No, it is relevant. Why is
don't understand
Donald Trump
how stupid people can be? He is in alliance with our enemy. That's called treason. Okay, it's a very simple concept. Okay, we elected someone who is an ally of our mortal enemy. That's called treason, and that usually brings down empires. You can't survive, okay, that kind of treason as a country. Yeah. And stupidly, we escaped narrowly, when we elected Biden, and now we're in it. So Now, the thing is, they're allies, but of course, like all gangsters, right, who are in alliance, there's always the chance that somebody might decide, you know what, you think you're the boss of bosses? Well, you're not the boss of me, you know. So every now
Yeah.
and then, Trump gets defiant with Putin. Well, I'm very unhappy with him. He's not doing nothing. He's not making me look bad. They have their. It's not as completely poodle-esque because he can get uppity,
Uh-huh.
but it is in the sense that in the international criminal conspiracy to destroy democracy, Putin is at the top, okay, and Trump is his capo. Like Trump is the American capo, but he's like John Gotti. He also kind of wants to kill the boss and become the head guy, so that you got that little tension going on, right? This is what I mean about, like, Hitler, Stalin, and Tojo, they were the best of friends, right? Until they weren't. And so this is what I mean when you don't have rules anymore, when you don't have an international order, you just have, nation states jockeying for power and influence. What you get is war. And now we have these weapons, right, that can destroy the planet. And we could have a war that could make the deaths in World War II look small, because these weapons are so powerful that not only can they kill so many people, but then the radiation makes so many places completely unlivable. I mean, look at Chernobyl. It's a ghost area. It's been totally abandoned. Fortunately, it didn't spread beyond Chernobyl. It could have if things had gone differently, and you could have had half of Russia being uninhabitable. So we're very close to the point where not only would we have mass casualties, but large portions of the planet could be uninhabitable. Then global warming. We really could be looking at the breakdown of civilization itself.
That's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. Let me ask you this. I know that you primarily focus on individual people in psychology, but is there a thing, and forgive me if this sounds ignorant or not, but is there a form of psychology that studies like entire population groups? Because it makes me wonder, like, sometimes I wonder if I'm in a psyop, like if the government is deliberately like doing things. I'm not making sense, but here's what I wonder. I wonder, is anybody right now focused on what the hell is going on with Americans? Why we keep electing a lunatic, a dangerous lunatic like this? Why are we ready to give up our democracy that is so wonderful in exchange for dictatorship? Why are there psychologists who focus on those kinds of things, like examining massive groups of people?
Well, not enough. It's interesting. After World War II, psychology really did turn its attention to these kinds of questions. And the person who kind of came out as the one who had the most to say about it was Adorno, who wrote this book called The Authoritarian Personality, because they were trying to understand what kind of a personality structure would be attracted to a Hitler. But they also looked at other things. They looked at how people can be, how easily people's sense of reality is manipulable, and how easily people's sense of morality is manipulable. So, for example, you're probably familiar with the famous Milgram experiment that nobody could do today.
What's that?
So the Milgram experiment is very interesting. So again, this is all these psychologists and then social psychologists trying to understand how could people become such vicious animals, right?
Oh, wait, is that the experiment where they told someone you shock this person on the other side of a screen, and then as long as they were being given instructions from someone else, that absolved them from. Is that the Milgram?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh,
that's the one. Right. And like, some of the subjects like brought it up to like near fatal, and the person was screaming, like as they're delivering the shock. So think about this. Like you're being inducted as you're the new prison guard at Dachau or whatever. Like, look, this is what you do, like you do it. do it, and it's like,
Yeah.
they said I was just following orders. Well,
Right.
that was what they were saying, is like, how can people become animals just because they've been ordered to? Well, actually, these were Yale undergraduates, okay,
Wow.
in the basement of the psychology building, being told to administer a powerful electric shock to one of their fellow students, right, who's screaming in pain. and the only thing that the Confederate would say is, you must continue.
That's sick. That is sick. Now wait, they were not really shocking people,
No,
right?
the person behind the screen was also a Confederate. Yeah, right, exactly. But
That's
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 but
wild.
you
So
still
that,
wouldn't be allowed to do that kind of experiment today because it would traumatize the subject.
John, that makes me think of ICE, right? There's a lot of people talking about, oh, it can't wait till the Hague, trials to prosecute these people in ICE. Here's what drives me nuts. I see these videos, I'm sure you've seen them too on TikTok and Twitter or whatever, of ICE agents with the masks, and some of them are black, some of them are Latino, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're seeing people crying, wives and children crying, screaming, and they don't give a shit.
There's another set of experiments that relates to what you're talking about. My colleague, Philip Zimbardo, who died recently, a very famous psychologist, was very involved with the duty to warn movement. So he became a friend. He's famous for something called the Stanford Prison Experiment. And in the Stanford Prison Experiment, and again, an experiment you couldn't do today. He got a bunch of Stanford undergraduates in the basement of his building. All right. And so he kind of divided them up, 12 randomly. He said, okay, you guys are going to be prisoners, and you guys are going to be guards. Okay. And I don't think he gave him much instruction, but like, okay, so we're going to role play this guy. So just, whatever, improvise, just like that. And within like 36 hours, the guards had become so sadistic to their fellow prisoner students that they had to stop the experiment.
What?
Oh
my
and
God.
And so here, no one was even instructing them, right, to be sadistic or, the way they would, let's say, a prison guard or whatever. It just like, it's more like Lord of the Flies, right? This culture just kind of evolved. Like there'd be one person in the kind of guard group who would be a little more sadistic and aggressive, and he'd kind of dominate the other guards, and they'd have to kind of like fall in line. They didn't want to stop him, but then he would kind of get some people that would be kind of on his side, and they would kind of like do shit to the to the other students, lock them in or whatever. I forget what the sadistic things that they did, but
Wow.
it just show how easily people can degenerate to animals. Really, we have a misplaced faith, I think, in the stability of human nature, because again, I will say it again, we are the most pampered human beings in the history of planet Earth.
Yeah. It's funny because I see stuff like that in like the zombie shows like The Walking Dead. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but the scary thing about The Walking Dead is supposed to be the zombies, but it ends up being the survivors, the human beings that are left to pillage each other and do all types of horrific things, either just to stay alive or just out of some sick, sadistic. There's no law to say I can't do this anymore.
Right. Well, going back to that state of nature that I was talking about, if anyone took political theory, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, it's like they start from a state of nature, right? And then they try to come up with some kind of social contract. But you go back to the state of nature. There's no social contract in the zombie apocalypse, right? There's no there's no constitution. There's no rule of law. There's no international law. And so this is what I'm saying. We're unraveling these things, right? And so you start to unravel them, and then you really don't know how far it can deteriorate once all the pillars that are holding up this order start to fall. We've never been at that bottom. We've never experienced that as people. During World War II, they did, they experienced that, but everyone who experienced that is dead now. Okay. So they said, never forget. Guess what? We all fucking forgot.
Very true. In your opinion, right? knowing what you know about Donald Trump, what is the best way for us to resist Donald Trump? How should we behave towards him? In order to take him down a peg, in order to keep him in check, what do we do? Do we ridicule him? Do we, what in your opinion, what's the best way to deal with a narcissistic madman?
Well, we used to talk about this a lot on the show. I mean, we've put so much hope in the midterms. It is kind of like our last hope in a way. And I'm just worried that he's going to I know he's going to do something, and probably more than one thing. So I don't know how that's going to go. But, I think just the common sense advice is to pick one thing that you're good at, that you can do. You're a social media influencer. You're doing your part. Just to pick one thing. Get involved with Indivisible. Get involved with No King's Day. Get involved with some of these political campaigns. It is all hands on deck. At this point. I think the one thing that did encourage me a lot was the response of the community in Minnesota. There you saw what real resistance looks like. Not upper middle class, go to Washington for a sunny picnic on No King's Day resistance. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to put down No King's Day. I don't want to, but I'm just saying, that's not going to do it. Okay, you're not going to dislodge Hitler with a one-day protest. But what happened in Minnesota was this became block by block in real time. You know what I mean? With an organized network, of people that were communicating, right? And were resisting systematically. It was more like a body, attacking an antigen, a germ, well, the white blood cells were surround the ice cars, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's resistance. You know what I mean? It's not protest. Resistance is more than protest. And so the other thing is, sadly, we are seeing a lot of people are scared, and they're, choosing, discretion being the better part of valor and whatever, not posting certain things, not saying certain things, not broadcasting certain things. And, just encourage people to just break that, just be a little defiant.
That is excellent. John, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. It's always a thrill talking to you and just
same here.
Picking your brain there. What are you doing these days? Like, where can people find your content or your stuff?
They more or less can't. I do show up once a month on the Daily Beast podcast. So that's kind of the one little, because right now I'm actually working way over time on a book about psilocybin therapy, which has nothing to do with politics. This is my way of claiming my flame. This is my life's work that had nothing to do with the 10-year detour that I've taken about Donald Trump.
Are you writing a book?
I'm writing a book about psilocybin therapy. Yeah, it's due in June.
Psilocybin, is that's not the that's not
magic
acid,
mushroom.
Right? Oh, okay.
Right? But this is a form of therapy that incorporates them. It's not just the use of the drug by itself. It's a therapeutic protocol where you actually have preparation. You have therapists who sit with you while you're going through the experience, and then people who talk with you afterwards to help you integrate it. And you're actually lying down. You have headphones on and eye shades on, and you're taking a very deep inward journey while you're listening to a playlist of music that's meant to evoke very intense emotional and spiritual feelings. And about 70% of the people have a mystical experience. And the remission rates from depression is off the charts. It's 3 times what Prozac will give you. And it's more than just remission. They really become more enlightened. They actually become more mindful. And it starts to affect their life in all kinds of ways afterwards. And that's what my book was about. I actually followed some people for a year after their participation in a clinical trial and saw how the process continued after their therapy session as they continue to kind of really grow in this mindfulness. And we understand why it is. On a PET scan, we actually see our executive functioning is all controlled by this thing called the default mode network. With psilocybin and other classic psychedelics and meditation, that network kind of goes down. It loses power, and other parts of the brain start to light up and talk to each other. So instead of just that voice in your head that's always torturing you and saying the same thing over and over again with its narrative, that actually gets kind of quiet. And it's like, they say when we use like 5% of our brain. I always say the default mode network's like 5% of our brain that occupies 95% of our attention. So it really is. We can see on a PET scan why it is so transformational, but I think it's going to revolutionize psychiatry.
That's amazing. That is truly amazing. Thank you for sharing that, folks. If you haven't had enough of Dr. Gartner, and I can't see why you would have enough of him, you should check out the videos, which I believe are timeless, on the Really American YouTube page. Go there and just type in "shrinking Trump." You'll want to stay for the last 10 minutes of the show. Those are classic. It's really fascinating. Thank you so much, Doc. And just hang tight. Don't disappear.
If you have time, I will tell you a funny story, but you may be out of time.
Share it. Let's go.
Okay. Well, because I used to do goofy things at the end of the show, and in one of them, I wore a blonde wig and I pretended to be Pam Bondi, and I sang this song, "I'm a Bondi girl, I'm a Bondi girl in a mega world," and my wife was completely embarrassed by this. She thought I looked like a complete fool, and she hated the humor. She hated the humorous parts at the end of the show. She called it cringe humor. Okay,
so funny.
And then I totally separate from in my psychologist life, I was called as an expert witness in a trial, and my wife said, "Oh no, they're going to play that Pam Bondi tape." I said, "No, they're not. There's nothing to do with this case." What are you talking about? They? And so I'm on the stand, and the opposing attorney gets, but he goes, "Dr. Gartner, is this you wearing a blonde wig, singing 'I'm a Bondi girl'?"
Oh God!
And he hits play, and they're like, la, 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 la. So my wife was right. Funny. They did. They played it. So I said, "Yeah, I had a political show, and at the end we did something funny. My wife calls it cringe humor," and everyone laughed, and that was the end of that. He didn't really have
excellent. So that kind of backfired on him, huh? Was he trying to use that to humiliate you?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big believer in wigs. I have a collection here, at least six of them.
Well, good. That I'm in good company. I'm among like-minded people who understand. I'm glad. I appreciate
that. Thank you again for joining me. Hang tight. Let me just sign off with my peeps here. And folks, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Defiant Weekly. I'm your host, Majid Padelin, aka BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad Defiant. And I look forward to seeing you guys here next week, same time, same place. I love you all. Peace. Incredible person, incredible human being. Yes, famous. Yes.
Well, they're the way.